Welcome! Today we'll learn how to crochet a granny square with a flower in its center. The square can be done in many different shapes and patterns. But in this video we'll demonstrate how this pattern is done. The yarn we'll use is Ollie's Skirm BB. And we'll use a size 3 hook. We can use any yarn we see suitable, the pattern is what matters the most. We'll begin with the starting chain and it will be 4 chain stitches. Join the first stitch with the last one to form a ring. So we started with 4 chains and join the first stitch with the last one. Now chain 1 and start the new round. This round will be single crochets, we'll do a round of single crochets into the starting chains. This round will be 8 single crochets. We chose to do 8 stitches because this number can be divided by 4. And for the next rounds as well we'll do a count of stitches that can be divided by 4. We'll start the first single crochet and as we see we go into the ring, not into the chain stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We did 8 single crochets, then we join the round with a slip stitch. So the first step we did was 4 chain stitches and we joined the first stitch with the last one to form a ring. Then we started working 8 single crochets into the ring, not into the chain stitches. As we said, the count of stitches should be divisible by 4, so we can do any multiples of 4. Now we'll start the next round. This is the round that will form the flower that will be in the center of the square. We'll do it with the popcorn stitch. It won't be a large popcorn stitch, we'll do it with only 3 stitches. We did 3 chain stitches because we do the popcorn stitch with double crochets. As we said, we have 8 single crochets in the previous round. We'll do 1 popcorn stitch in each of these single crochets. So we'll do 3 double crochets in the first stitch. As we can see, we do the 3 stitches in the same stitch. Pay attention for the pattern please. After we did the 8 single crochets we did 3 chains. To start the new round, because we'll do popcorn stitches, which is basically a number of double crochets. So we'll do 1 popcorn stitch in each of the 8 single crochets. Each popcorn stitch consists of 3 double crochets. We did 3 stitches together in the first stitch. I'll leave this loop loose and I'll insert the hook into the first stitch. As we can see the loops of the first stitch. Then I'll pull the loose loop through the loop of the first stitch like this. So it joins the stitches together and form the popcorn stitch shape. One more time. After we do the 3 double crochets, we leave the loop that was on the hook a bit loose. Pull the hook and insert it into the first double crochet we did. We go into both loops of the stitch above. Then pull the loose loop through the loop of the first stitch to join the stitches together like this. Now we'll do a chain stitch to separate each two popcorn stitches. But we'll stretch the stitch a bit longer, as we can see. I'll allow the loop on the hook to be a little bit loose like this, so we can have a reasonable space between each two popcorn stitches. Now we'll do another popcorn in the second single crochet. And as we said, we'll do one popcorn stitch in each of the single crochets of the previous round. We'll separate between each two popcorn stitches with a chain stitch, and we'll stretch it a bit like so. Now we'll do 3 double crochets together in the same stitch. Get the hook out of this loop and insert it into the first stitch. So insert the hook into the first stitch, then pull the last loop through the loop of the first double crochet. Now we have the second popcorn stitch. I'll pull the loop up a bit so we get a longer chain stitch. Now we'll do another popcorn stitch in the third single crochet. As we said, we start the popcorn stitch by doing 3 double crochets together in the same stitch. If we wanted a bigger popcorn stitch, we can do 4 or 5 double crochets. I only did 3 stitches because I don't want the flower in the center to be popping more than that. But if you wanted the flower to be bigger and more popping, you can make more than 3 double crochets in each popcorn stitch. So now we did 3 double crochets, then we pulled the hook out of this loop here, and get it into the loop of the first double crochet, then get this loop and pull it through the first loop, and join them together like this. Then I'll stretch this loop a bit to do a long chain stitch. Now I'll do the fourth stitch the same way. 3 double crochets together in the same stitch. Get the hook out of this loop, and get it into the first double crochet we did. Then pull this loop through the first one and stretch this loop to get a long chain stitch. Then continue doing the rest of popcorn stitches the same way. Now we've gotten to the last popcorn stitch, so we'll join the round at the third chain of the starting chains with a slip stitch. As we can see now, we get a circular or a flower shape made of a number of popcorn stitches. We did each popcorn stitch in each of the 8 single crochets we did in the previous round. Each popcorn stitch is basically 3 double crochets. Then we pull the last loop through the first loop of the first double crochet we did. And we separate each 2 popcorn stitches with a chain stitch, and we stretch its loop a bit to get a long chain. And as we said, we can have a more popping popcorn stitch by making more than 3 double crochets, which will make this flower to pop more than this. So this is the circular shape of the flower, and now we'll make the square shape by forming its corners. As we explained in the beginning, we chose to do 8 stitches. So it'll be divisible by 4 to give us equal spaces between each 2 stitches in the square. I'll use another color here, connect the new strand and chain up 3. Now we'll start the first corner in the square. The corners of the square will be done in the gap between each 2 popcorn stitches. We'll start with the gap between the first popcorn stitch and the starting chains in the previous round. We'll count the chain we did now as one of the stitches. And when we do the next stitches, we'll do a double crochet instead of this chain. So now we'll do 2 double crochets. Now we have 3 stitches including the chain stitches. Now chain up 1, until now we're working into the same empty space before the first popcorn stitch. So we started with 2 double crochets. And when we come to the other corner, we'll do 3 double crochets. So after the chain we did, we'll do 3 double crochets, all of them are in the same gap. So each corner will consist of 3 double crochets. Then another 3 and separated by a chain stitch. This chain is what will form the corner. And this is how the corner is formed. The pattern for this corner will remain the same no matter how large the square size has become. And we will repeat the same steps each time we get to the corner. So when we do the corner in a specific pattern, this means that we'll repeat this pattern in this corner with each row we do and for all corners as well. We did 3 stitches in this corner. And as we said, since we included the chains at the beginning, so we did only 2 double crochets. Then we did a chain and then another 3 double crochets. As we can see, the chain separates each set of double crochets and forms the corner. We have 8 popcorn stitches. And now we'll divide them equally, so the space between each 2 corners is the same. So after the first 2 popcorn stitches there will be the second corner. And then the third corner after the next 2 popcorn stitches. 2 more stitches and then the fourth corner. The last 2 stitches will be between the fourth and the first corners. This way the spaces will be equal between the square corners. We'll do 3 double crochets between the first and the second stitches. These stitches will separate each 2 corners in this row. So before the first popcorn stitch we formed the first corner. Then we did the separate stitches which is between the 2 corners. After the second stitch we will do the second corner and it will be the same as we demonstrated before. First we do 3 double crochets. And the chain that will form the corner. And then we will do another 3 double crochets. As we can see, we are working in the same gap between the second and the third popcorn stitches. And this is the second corner of the square. It was 3 double crochets, then a chain stitch and then another 3 double crochets. the whole corner was done in the same gap here. In the next gap we'll do the stitches that will separate each two corners, the 3 double crochets. Now we've completed the separator stitches. This is the second corner, skip 2 popcorn stitches and we will do the third corner. So again, 3 double crochets. Then a chain stitch. Then another 3 double crochets. And as we said, all parts of the corner are done in the same gap. So this is the third corner. We did 3 double crochets, then a chain stitch and then another 3 double crochets. Now we'll do the separator stitches. Three double crochets together in the same gap. And these are the stitches that separate each two corners. Now we'll form the fourth and last corner of the square the same way. 3 double crochets. Then a chain stitch. And in the same gap we'll do another 3 double crochets. The fourth corner has been formed. As we can see, the square shape with its 4 corners started to form. Now we'll do the separate stitches in this gap between the fourth and first corners. As we did before, 3 double crochets in the gap between these 2 popcorn stitches. We've gotten to the end, so we'll join the round at the third chain stitch with a slip stitch. So after we completed the popcorn stitches that form the flower. And as we said, the count of stitches should be divisible by 4. We did 8 popcorn stitches so we can get equal spaces between each 2 corners. We started the first corner in the first gap, which is before the first popcorn stitch. Between the chain stitches here and the first stitch. Then we started the corner, which pattern will be the same for all corners. 3 double crochets. Then a chain stitch and then another 3 double crochets, all are in the same gap. So 2 sets of 3 double crochets separated by a chain stitch. In the first corner we counted the chain we did here as one of the double crochets. So in this corner we'll do only 2 double crochets. But the pattern for the corner is as we demonstrated. 6 double crochets, 2 sets of 3 double crochets separated by a chain stitch. Between each 2 corners there will be 2 popcorn stitches. And between these 2 popcorn stitches and the corners we did in this row. In this gap, we'll do 3 double crochets that will separate each 2 corners. Then we skip 2 popcorn stitches and get to the next corner. And we'll do the same pattern of the corner into the gap between the second and third stitches. Same pattern for all corners, 3 double crochets. Then a chain stitch and then another 3 double crochets, all done in the same gap. Then in the gap between these 2 popcorn stitches we'll do 3 double crochets. That will separate the second and third corners. 3 double crochets in this gap. And we'll repeat the same pattern for the third corner. Then we do 3 double crochets together in the same gap. And then the fourth corner and the separate stitches so we have a full square. We'll start the next row in the square, but pay attention for the step we'll do now. We need to distinguish the square corners. This step might not be done in other square patterns. But in this square, we'll do this step because we want to work in the gaps and not into the double crochets. This step is that we will move the yarn to the first gap, so it will be the starting point of the new row. Because we won't be working into the double crochets themselves, it'll be more clear during work. So for us to move the yarn, we will slip stitch at the 2 double crochets and at the chain stitch. 1, 2. As we can see, we did 3 slip stitches to move the yarn, so the new round will start at this gap here. And this is the step we'll do for the square pattern. Because as we said, we won't work the next row into the double crochet stitches. We'll only work into the gaps between the double crochets. And that's why it's preferable to start the new row at the first gap of this row. So this is the reason why we move the strand from the point where we completed the last round to the first gap here by doing 3 slip stitches. As we said, we'll do this step of moving the strand in the square so we can work into the gaps. We won't work into the double crochets. The first gap, as we can see, is the one at the first corner of the square. As we said, we will repeat the pattern for this corner for all corners of the square so they will all look the same. So with each row we do in the square, we'll repeat the same pattern we did in the first corner for all corners. So that we get the same pattern in all corners and we get a consistent square. I'll repeat that again, but I'll use another color. Of course, it's your choice to use the same color or change it to another color as you wish. Now we'll do 3 chains because we will work with double crochets. And as we said, the chains will be counted as one of the corner stitches, so we'll do 2 double crochets. Now we did 3 stitches, chain 1 and do 3 double crochets in the same gap. As we can see, we repeated the same pattern for the corner, working in the first gap at the chain that separates the double crochets in the previous round. So with each new row, the corner will be done at the chain that separates the double crochets. The corner in the next rows will follow the same pattern. Now we'll do the stitches that separate the corners from each other, so chain 1. This chain is just an extra stitch to allow the square to be more comfortable. So in the next rounds, if we thought that there is no need for this chain, we can just ignore doing it. Or if the square was taut and we needed more space for each side, we can do more than 1 chain. In the previous round, the separator we did was 3 double crochets. In this round we have 2 more gaps, so we'll do 3 double crochets in each of them. first we chain up 1. Another 3 double crochets in the next gap as well. Pay attention that the gaps we're doing the double crochets in are not the gaps in the corner itself. These are the gaps in between the corners. And when we get to the empty space at the second corner, we'll start forming the corner itself. Chain up 1. And now we'll form the corner. 3 double crochets. And a chain stitch. And another 3 double crochets in the same gap. I'll explain what we've done so far, after we've finished the off-white round. As we said, we worked the new row into the gaps between the stitches, not into the double crochet stitches themselves. So we moved the strand to the first gap in the round by doing 3 slip stitches. To start the new round at this point here, after we connected the new strand and started the new round, we started at the gap in the first corner. After we formed the 4 corners of the square, in each of the next rows. At each corner we work into the chain that separates each 2 sets of the double crochets. And we repeat the same pattern for the corner, which is 3 double crochets. And a chain, then another 3 double crochets. All of this is done in the gap in the previous round between the double crochet sets. Pay attention that at the beginning of this round we had 3 chains, which were counted as one of the stitches we do in the corner pattern. Then we got to the separator stitches. In the previous round we had only 3 double crochets as a separator, but here we have 2 gaps. As we said, in the new round we'll work into the gaps, not into the double crochets themselves. So we have 2 gaps between the first and second corners. In each gap we'll do 3 double crochets. But before we do the 3 double crochets we'll do 1 chain stitch. So after we did the first corner we do a chain stitch and then 3 double crochets. Then a chain and another 3 double crochets and another chain. We've gotten to the second corner, and as we said, in this round we only work in the gaps. So at the same gap in each corner we will repeat the same pattern for the new corner in the next rows. As for the gaps in the middle, as we can see we do 3 double crochets in each gap. We've gotten to the next corner and we repeated the same pattern for the corner, between the 2 sets of double crochets. 3 double crochets, a chain stitch and another 3 double crochets. And there must be a chain stitch to separate between the sets of double crochets, because this is where we will make the corner in the new row. And between each 2 sets of double crochets we did a chain stitch to separate between them. And we can choose now to make this chain stitch, or make more than one as we see suitable to get a nice looking square. If the side of the square is a bit taut than it should be, then we can do 2 chains and 1 separator. So the final look of the square is satisfying. Now we're working in the gaps in between the corners, so we'll repeat the same steps. Chain 1 and do 3 double crochets in the first gap. Chain 1, then 3 double crochets in the second gap. And this is the pattern for the side of the square, which is between each 2 corners. Chain up 1. We've gotten to the third corner. And we'll work the corner in this gap between these two sets of double crochets. We'll repeat the same pattern, 3 double crochets, then a chain stitch, and another 3 double crochets in the same gap. All the stitches that we've done so far, whether the chain, the single crochet, the popcorn or the double crochet, you can refer to our crochet basics videos where all of these stitches are demonstrated in detail. Now we've completed the third corner in this round. We did the new corner in the gap of the corner in the previous round. Now chain 1 and we'll start making the side of the square, so 3 double crochets in the first gap. Chain 1, 3 double crochets in the second gap, and as we see, we're working in the gaps between each two corners, not the gaps of the corners themselves. We've gotten to the fourth corner and did 1 chain, then in this gap we'll do the pattern for the new corner. 3 double crochets, and a chain stitch, and another 3 double crochets in the same gap. Now this is the last side of the square. We'll do it the same way, 3 double crochets in the first gap, and a chain stitch, and 3 double crochets in the last gap. And we'll finish the round and join it at the third chain stitch with a slip stitch. Now the square shape and its corners became more clear. If we wanted to make more rows, we'll do it the same way, paying attention to the gaps between the corners. So if we did a new round, we should pay attention that in the gaps of each corner, we repeat the same pattern for the new corner, which is 3 double crochets and a chain, then another 3 double crochets. We do this pattern in this gap. As for the stitches in each side, now we have 3 gaps, so we'll repeat the same pattern we did before, doing 3 double crochets in each gap and separate with as many chain stitches as we see fit. And we repeat the same pattern for the corner in the gaps so that we maintain the square shape. As we demonstrated in this square, we're working in the gaps. So if we wanted to make a new round, we'll move the strand the same way as we did to the first gap by doing slip stitches. We do 3 slip stitches to move the strand from here to the first gap here. And we start the corner in the new row from this point. We'll do this step with each new round we do. Now we've completed the square. If you like this video, don't forget to like and share. And if you have any question, write it in the comments. Subscribe now if you want to get all our new videos. Thank you.